He didn't ask to be seen. Most days he barely asked for anything. He sat by the road, hands open, listening to the world pass him by, step after step, voice after voice, all blending into the noise of life he could never see. He had never witnessed the sunrise, never seen his reflection in a pool of water, never once looked into the face of his mother. He had been blind since birth, and in that world of darkness, people assumed things about him. He must have done something wrong, they whispered, or maybe his parents did. One day, as he sat in the dust, he heard a new group approach. They weren't throwing coins, they were throwing questions. "Rabbi," one asked, "who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" John chapter 9, verse 2. The man held his breath. He'd heard it before, so many times. Born blind, must be a curse, must be a punishment. But then another voice spoke, calm, clear, unlike the rest. "Neither," the man said. "This happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." John chapter 9, verse 3. Wait. What? Not punishment, but purpose. Could it be that the very thing people used to shame him, his blindness, was the very place God had been planning to shine? Lesson 1. God's purpose can shine through our pain. Right there, in the dirt, the forgotten man became chosen. He wasn't broken. He was the backdrop for a miracle. The voice stepped closer. There was a pause, then a strange sound, spitting, then fingers moving in the dust. The man flinched when warm hands touched his face, mud being spread gently over his eyes. Then came the words, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam." John chapter 9, verse 7. No explanation, no promise of healing, just a command. He sat there, mud on his face, heart pounding. He couldn't see, but something deep inside told him this was the moment. So he stood. He staggered. He reached for the familiar edges of walls and doorways, counting steps through streets he knew only by memory and sound. He found the pool, and he washed. Water trickled down over the muddy mess, and in an instant, light. Not just brightness, but shape, color, edges, and shadows. He blinked and gasped and laughed all at once. He could see. Tears filled the eyes that had never seen before. The first image he ever witnessed was a miracle. Lesson 2. Obedience often comes before the miracle. He didn't argue. He didn't understand. He just obeyed. And through simple trust, his world changed. When he walked back through the village, no longer fumbling, no longer reaching, people stopped and stared. "Isn't this the man who used to beg?" they asked. "It's me," he said, grinning. "It's really me." John chapter 9, verse 9. "Then how were your eyes opened?" they pressed. He didn't try to impress them, didn't exaggerate. The man they called Jesus made some mud, he said. "Put it on my eyes, told me to wash. I went, I washed, and now I see." John chapter 9, verse 11. That's simple, but not simple enough for the Pharisees. They dragged him to the synagogue. These were the men who knew the scriptures, kept the rules, controlled the truth, and yet they could not accept this. "He did this on the Sabbath?" they asked, horrified. "That breaks the law. This man, Jesus, he can't be from God." John chapter 9, verse 16. They questioned the miracle, questioned the man's honesty, even summoned his parents, who nervously said, "He's our son, yes. And yes, he was born blind, but how he sees now, we don't know. He's old enough. Ask him." John chapter 9, verse 20 to 21. They were afraid, but their son was not. When the Pharisees called him back again, trying to trap him into denying Jesus, he answered with courage, "Whether he is a sinner I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. John chapter 9, verse 25. That sentence echoed like thunder in their silence. He didn't have all the answers, but he had his story, and no one could take that from him. Lesson 3. A simple testimony is more powerful than arguments. He didn't quote the law. He didn't debate. He just told the truth of what God had done. Sometimes your changed life is the loudest sermon you'll ever preach. The leaders were furious. You were steeped in sin since birth. They hissed, "How dare you lecture us?" John chapter 9, verse 34. And just like that, they cast him out. Thrown from the synagogue, cut off from the community. Once blind, now healed, and still rejected. Lesson 4. But truth will always face resistance. When you stand for what's real, not everyone will applaud. Sometimes standing in the light means being pushed out of the dark. But Jesus heard. He heard they had thrown the man out. So he found him, and Jesus asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" John chapter 9, verse 35. The man, unsure but open, answered, "Who is he, sir? Tell me, so that I may believe." And Jesus, smiling, full of grace, said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you." John chapter 9, verse 37. The man's knees trembled. Tears welled in his miracle-born eyes, and he whispered, "Lord, I believe." John chapter 9, verse 38. Then he fell to his knees. He worshipped. Lesson 5. When the world casts you out, Jesus brings you in. The synagogue rejected him. Jesus received him. When the world shuts you out, Jesus walks in and calls you his. And there it is. A man once invisible to the world now saw everything clearly, not just trees and faces and colors, but truth and Jesus and himself. The final words of the story linger in the air. "I have come," Jesus said, "so that the blind may see, and those who think they see may become blind." John chapter 9, verse 39. Because real blindness isn't in the eyes, it's in the heart, and real sight doesn't start with what you look at. It starts with who you trust. Maybe you've sat in silence like that man, wondered what your pain means, wondered if you've been forgotten. Maybe you've begged for help, and people passed you by. But here's what this story reminds us. You are not unseen, you are not unloved, and your suffering, however dark, is not wasted. The same Jesus who saw that man in the dust sees you now. He still touches blind eyes, still speaks into silence, still opens hearts to see. So what will you do with your darkness? Will you trust the one who makes mud into miracles? Then get up. Go. Washington. And when the water clears, may you open your eyes and see him.